Okay guys, so I'm in here working on the '05 Sportsman 700. I had an issue with the fuel sending unit, the speedometer gauge, and the needle for the speedometer was flashing that it was out of gas, and it really wasn't out of gas. So I did a bunch of research on forums and found out that it's a fuel sending unit. So I decided to take it upon myself to rip this thing apart and dig into it a little bit and see what's going on. So I'm going to share this with you guys because I hope it's going to solve a lot of your problems as well. And it wasn't a fuel sending unit, so I'll explain what it was. Finally, after many hours and busted knuckles of ripping this thing apart to get this fender piece off and take a look at the fuel sending unit. It's right there on the gas tank, and it's just plugged in with a little wire. The fuel line is hooked to it. That's the fuel sending unit. It's the fuel pump. It's fuel filter in there, and it's just held on by 5 screws and a rubber O-ring. So I took those all out. I'm going to dig this out and I'm going to show you guys what I found. Okay, so once you get it out this far, there's you have to actually take off the float arm. And if I can get in there a little bit, that's it right there with the little white arm there. So there's a little black clip on that, and you have to sort of unclip that white arm and take this fuel sending unit and pump out separately from the arm because it doesn't fit out together with the float bowl with the little floater on the end. So I'm going to disassemble that and pull it all out and show you. Okay, so here's the fuel sending unit, and I'm just going to try to do my best to show you guys a little bit about what's going on here with electronics. This is sort of the circuit board of the fuel sending unit right here. Yeah, right there. And there's 2 contacts on your float arm that ride up against these 2 electrical contacts here on this little motherboard, I guess you'd call it. And when I first took this out, these were all sort of corroded and sort of covered up with residue from fuel. So I took a little Scotch pad and I cleaned those up, and they came out perfect. And this is the float arm. This is the float arm here that goes right into that circle, and those are the 2 contacts on the float arm that connect with that circuit board. They were all a little bit worn out as well. They're just kind of dirty and oily. So I cleaned them up as well, and I put the arm back together, just like this. And you can see that those contacts ride on that. And when I did that and pushed it in, the fuel gauge worked absolutely perfect again. And there's no more issues. Other than when I did take this arm off, this is what I found. And it was empty, which means the little floater had fallen right off of it. So what I did is I used an old floater from a carburetor, tried it out. It didn't work. It didn't have enough flotation, and it was sort of catching on the inside of the tank, so I discovered that didn't work very good. And what I ended up doing was I searched the gas tank over and over and over again, and I ended up finding the old floater stuck in the bottom of the gas tank. Well, not stuck, but floating, and found out that it had kind of worn through the end of the arm, wore through kind of the middle of this floater, and then it obviously just pulled through the end of it. And over the years, I guess it just rattled off and no longer worked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back on, and I'm going to use a plastic washer to go on the end of it, and hopefully reassemble, and it'll work. So I'll show you when I get it together what it looks like. Okay, so here's my new floater. Contacts are cleaned up again. Put the floater on. It's the old one. Cost me 20 cents. Tiny little hole there that is absolutely perfect for the size of the rod. Tiny little hole in that dime, perfectly for the end of the rod, and then it closes up that huge big gap. And the floater's on there quite snug with that little push-on nut. And yeah, 20 cents later, now I'll attach it, and I'm going to drop everything back down into the tank, and hopefully we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so I've got the fuel sending unit back in there. It was a pretty huge job. I had to take this whole headlight cover assembly apart, the handlebars off, and I wanted to really make sure that that sending unit and the little float arm went in very square. So I took that all off, and turn the key on here and we'll see what we get for fuel gauge. There it is, it's working, and of course the fuel tank's almost empty because I had to take the fuel sending unit out and didn't want to spill gas, so I emptied her pretty much empty, and it reads pretty much empty. So I'm going to fill it up with some gas now and turn it on, and let's see how it indicates. Okay, well, I just filled it up. There's the gas in there, you can see, and the gauge reads totally full. So we're good to go. And that's the fix. It's not easy to take these Polaris quads apart, but once you get them apart, it's kind of nice to be able to fix something like that otherwise would have been maybe a couple $100. So hopefully this video helps you, and double check that float, make sure it hasn't fallen off, and don't be afraid to take some time and take that sending unit apart and clean the contacts. Could save you a lot of money.